that created the first 2-on-1. And they're going to say with his Asperger's, that was more than he could process.
Indeed.
And then when I was 3-on-1, then I ended up with 3 people getting stabbed. So, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm going to be sad to miss. I'm going to be sad to miss what I missed because I'm going in my
Yeah.
to get my hearing scheduled. So there you go. Where's my coffee? Oh, Mary, I lost my coffee.
Alex Zelinsky has some pretty neat tweets on the subject. Blair Stenvik, too. Interesting. I don't know Blair.
Okay, who are the lawyers?
Oh, okay. It was on Alex Zelinsky's tweet. I think it's Dean something. Hold up.
Dean Smith? Dean Smith and Ray Scholl.
Dean Smith.
House, I don't know who spells it. And I don't know who the other DA is. Who's the big DA? The one with the square head. What's his name? Come on, I'm trying to know.
Okay. Oh my god. Oh my god. So I've never heard of this website, Cop Blaster. What is this about?
Cop Blaster?
Yeah. It's all
CopBlaster.com. It's all about excessive force, I guess.
Oh, it's really like so much satire I can't understand it. It looks what does it say? Wow. Okay. One of the articles says Jeremy Christian needs to stop killing. And then another says can't find tickets for Jeremy Christian show trial anywhere. Testimony not supported by evidence. Ooh, okay. Okay. I guess I can read that all night if I want to.
Are you on the Cop Blaster site?
Uh-huh, yeah. Where'd you...
That would have been Cyrus.
Cyrus who?
I don't know, the guy that was next to me.
Okay, interesting. No, it's it's full.
He recognized me.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, his little website is like crunk, I guess. Crunk? Oh.
It's just scribbled down CopBlaster.com on one of my green screen cards. They're maybe 3x5s, probably not, but
wow.
close. Look at the library.
So here's what he says about. Oh, here's his article. It says cell phone video supports Jeremy Christian's self-defense claim. I just got back from the Jeremy Christian trial where the cell phone video clearly shows Micah Fletcher violently throw him into his seat before Jeremy stabbed him. The video matches the version of events that Jeremy personally gave me at the jail a long time ago while we were doing time together. The video was shot by a young woman that testified today. The audio from the recording featured a lot of off-color, rude, and antagonistic statements made by Jeremy Christian, but noticeably absent from the audio were any racist remarks or any demands that the Muslim passengers on the train go back to Saudi Arabia. Jeremy has stated to several people, including mental health experts and myself, that he only said people should go to Saudi Arabia if they do not like free speech. There was a lot of stuff along the lines of, if you don't like free speech, get out of America, but nothing to support the accusations that he singled out 2 Muslim passengers with anti-Muslim rant directed just at them. It seems more likely that they heard parts of what he said about going to Saudi Arabia and inferred that they were directed at them because they were the only obvious Muslims on the train. Other evidence shows that Micah Fletcher admitted to police right after the incident that he recognized Jeremy from the free speech rally a few weeks earlier, in which Jeremy managed to piss off just about everyone in attendance. The defense said that Jeremy got death threats after that rally, and there was not a way for him to know the intentions of the three men on the train. They make a good point. Their point is consistent with what Jeremy has been saying since I first was in the housing unit with him July 2017 when I was put in with him just over a year later. The only thing about the video that is bad for Jeremy is that he threw some shoves of his own before Micah threw him into the seat. I think whether or not Jeremy can claim self-defense to the shoves depends on whether or not other videos show him becoming physical first by knocking the phone out of Talisin Namkai-Meshe's hand before the three victims in quotation mark entered his personal bubble. The Ninth Circuit defines simple assaults to include showing a force likely to cause reasonable apprehension of harm. So was that force in response to words about religions, or was that showing a force in response to Jeremy going out of his way to smash his cell phone? If he smashed the phone, was it being shoved in his face? Answers to those questions are real facts of the case that a jury is theoretically supposed to look at. Those facts include Jeremy's diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. This is another consistency in Jeremy's statements. Before my release, November 2018, Jeremy told me that he was being evaluated by an Asperger's specialist, although he might have been playing to my ear because he already knew that I have Asperger's syndrome. I told him that I thought he had it based on the psych eval that I read in my observations since knowing him. He had so many things in common with AS that I would have been shocked to hear if he did not have it. That also further supports my belief that this is at most a manslaughter case. Like Jeremy, I've struggled with anger management when I felt threatened and have done violent things before my mind had the amount of time it needed to process everything right. That comes as a surprise to people to know that my...
Wait a second. I'm gonna reboot. I can hear you enough that it's hurting my brain.
Okay, no, it's cool. No, he's really long-winded. I can't believe he wrote this all today. This is amazing. You know, I will have the robot read it.
So give it a shot.
That comes as... It was not really a problem for me until after I was diagnosed with PTSD in my early 20s. Jeremy has that dual diagnosis also. The result is someone is normally a law-abiding citizen until they feel threatened. Then they flip out before really realizing what they did. Finally, they realize what they did and regret it, while at the same time blaming whoever set them up for doing something that they were predisposed
It's even
to
worse
react
than
to
a
themselves.
human, isn't it?
Sometimes there is legitimacy in victim blaming, especially if someone knew of your diagnosis unprovoked you on.
No, I just...
Force a human on your phone because a human on your phone can't even be understood. I'm trying to understand you, but it's just...
Call me in like 5 years when I have a better phone, Barry. Stop the belly aching. You don't want to deal with my I'm the person who wouldn't buy a new computer because until my friend told me it was unacceptable that 3 didn't work. I was recycling my e-waste till the bitter end. It's hard for me not to be cheap. I'm a cheap person. I dumpster dive. I eat rotten food. I'm a gross person.
All right. Okay, well, good for you. So, okay.
Keep going.
You said about Asperger's and
Okay.
to my ear.
That also further supports my belief that this is not a manslaughter case. Like Jeremy, I've struggled with anger management when I felt threatened, and I've done violent things before my mind had the amount of time it needed to process everything right. That comes as a surprise to people that know my IQ score is high. It was not really a problem for me until after I was diagnosed with PTSD in my early 20s. Jeremy had that dual diagnosis also. The result is someone that is normally a law-abiding citizen until they feel threatened, then they flip out before really realizing what they did. Finally, they realize what they did and regret it, while at the same time blaming whoever set them off for doing something that they were predisposed to react a certain way towards. Sometimes there is a legitimacy in victim blaming, especially if someone knew of your diagnosis and provoked you on purpose. That obviously was not the case here.
And what?
Provoking on purpose is what he's pointing out. But he doesn't think that's the case here. The idea put forth by prosecutor Jeff House You were looking for the name of that. Jeff Howells today was ridiculous. Howes. Jeff, Jeff. He claims that Jeremy created a confrontation to give himself the right to defend himself, and that you can't claim self-defense if you intentionally cause a physical confrontation. Even if Jeremy were the first one to do anything physical in this case, that doesn't not mean that he boarded the train intent on stabbing people. The footage from him ranting about cutting off heads the day before does not mean that he ever really intended to try to cut off anyone's head off. Maybe like other people with AS and PTSD, he thought that making himself look scary would keep anyone from attacking him if he continued to exercise free speech in ways he knew would anger a lot of people. Wow. It's also likely that Jeremy did not realize just how angry his comments made people. People like us do not experience empathy much, and we are really bad at putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Empathy comes so naturally that it is hard for normal people to understand how some people can't empathize without trying to. People like us find it funny to see people get offended because we're not so vulnerable to becoming offended. We also tend to observe the world from a somewhat detached point of view and are quick to...
Wait. I want you offended. Again. So what are you talking about?
I'll just start the paragraph. I don't know where you lost me. It is also likely that Jeremy did not realize how angry his comment made people. People like us do not experience empathy much, and we are really bad at putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Empathy comes so naturally to most that it's hard for normal people to understand how some people can't empathize without trying to. People like us find it funny to see people get offended because we are not so vulnerable to becoming offended. We also tend to observe the world from a somewhat detached point of view and are quick to point out hypocrisies in others. A person with AS would view confrontations between groups like Antifa and Patriot Prayer as a clash of the hypocrites because of similarities in their tactics. Tactics like claiming to support free speech only to take steps against people for exercising free speech. Jeremy Christian is not a monster. He is just a misunderstood person that has struggled his entire life with a disability that he can only now begin to understand. I am fortunate to have been diagnosed over 15 years ago, but even then at age 20, I was considered a little old for a diagnosis. It took a traumatic experience for me to see my therapist and get diagnosed. AS was not a recognized condition until '94, so our generation did not benefit from childhood therapy like kids have today. I would not know Jeremy if I didn't have AS. If I didn't have AS, I probably would not have threatened someone online in 2012 and would not have slapped a halfway house worker in 2014, would not have thrown spicy chips at a deputy in 2017. I had the misfortune of being in federal court where you can't use a diminished capacity defense in violent cases. Jeremy can use that defense in state court. There is little to no doubt in my mind that Jeremy was either defending himself or felt the need to defend himself because he has AS and PTSD. A normal person would have just made for the exit, even though Micah Fletcher had no legal right to tell him to get off the max. People with AS are overly principled, and Jeremy's principles, kind of like mine, include a focus on free speech. If he thinks he has a First Amendment right to do...
Focus on the what? Focus on the what?
The focus of free speech. If he thinks he has a First Amendment right to do something, he will not go quietly if you get in his way. I was lucky because eventually a psychologist convinced the U.S. Attorney's Office that I only committed assaults because of my environment and that the only way to protect correction staff from me was to let me go. I came really close to getting sentenced as a career offender in the feds because they only require 2 prior offenses involving violence or a threat of violence to categorize you as such. I wonder what Micah thinks about... This is almost over. 3 sentences. I wonder what Micah...
Wait, I should wait for a reason. What? Personality.
I wonder what Micah thinks about Jeremy having AS. Mike is also on the autism spectrum, but his interests seem more focused on goals shared with Antifa. This is starting to look like the tragic result of 2 people on the same end of the autism spectrum and opposite ends of the political spectrum. 2 equally stubborn individuals whose stubborn behavior can be traced to the same developmental disability. Their only difference is that the public labels one as the far right and the other as the far left. No, that was the best part of this. Okay.
All testing horns and bells and alarms at the same